All right. We're going to keep going through Romans 8. And just a reminder, we left off last time here in verse 17. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him, in order that we might also be glorified with him. And that really is the theme of this next section that we're going to be looking at is suffering. What it looks like to suffer with Jesus so that we will also be glorified with him. And so there's this trajectory of suffering to glory that is the theme. Suffering to glory. And so you'll notice that as we dive into this next section here, go ahead and read. This is chapter 8, verses 18, and we'll go about halfway through this next little chunk. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. We're going to stop there, but I'm going to keep reading because this is all just so interconnected. So it's important to have the whole framework in view, even though we're going to only dive into a few of these verses. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And he who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. That's an important concept here. This conforming to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. All right. So you can see this pattern, these descriptions of suffering and glory throughout this passage. And so I'm going to go back, and green will be the descriptions or allusions to the suffering, and then the blue will be allusions to the glory, just so you can see that interplay. So he introduces the sufferings of this present time, that they're not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed. So there's a right now in this present time, there is sufferings. Future, there will be a glory revealed. So it's hidden, it's not experienced right now, but we're waiting for it. And then what does it say? It says the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility. This is a description of how the creation is suffering, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it. That is God. God is the one who is subjecting creation to futility because creation itself is under curse as a result of sin. And yet, God is doing this work of taking that futility, taking that suffering, and from it producing glory, producing a redemption. And it is in hope that the creation itself will be set free. So part of this freedom that, or part of the glory that creation is waiting for, is this being set free. That should be blue. Being set free from its bondage to corruption. That's going to be part of the sufferings. There's a bondage, a captivity, and then again, obtaining the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So this should remind you a little bit of what we've already been talking about, and that is this slave versus free, or excuse me, versus son. That's the comparison here. And then bondage versus freedom. And groaning versus rejoicing. So these are kind of some of the aspects of the comparison and contrast that started with the spirit and the flesh. So now we're seeing what it looks like for the spirit to reign, which is the spirit makes us sons, it makes us adopted into God's family. The spirit sets us free, and the spirit creates hope in rejoicing. We have a rejoicing hope in confidence of what the Lord is doing, even as we continue to suffer. So those are some of the comparisons and contrasts of what it looks like for the spirit to reign and for the flesh to reign. And this is not just individually that we experience this, but this is cosmically. It's all of creation. That is what Paul is talking about here. He says that because humans were made image bearers and were given stewardship over the earth, their fall, their bondage, their slavery created curse on the earth. And that curse is directly at the will of God. And so that's something that we have to see here, is that what creation didn't willingly enter into this, but because of him who subjected it, and it was subjected in hope. So on one hand, Adam subjected creation to bondage and futility. On the other hand, all of this was done in hope. God used and even ordained everything that comes to pass in order to bring about this freedom, this redemption, this beauty. And you see that later, where really what God is doing in all of this, in all of our sufferings, is he is conforming us to the image of his son. And it is for the purpose, we are conformed to the image of the son for a purpose. What is that purpose? It's so that Jesus would be the firstborn among many brothers. So it's actually to glorify Jesus that we are involved in this work, that our suffering is used to conform us to the image of the Son. And so the creation is part of that, and the creation is groaning together in these pains of childbirth until now. And then not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit. So there's a first fruits, which implies that there's more to come. The first fruits are just the very beginnings of a big, large crop. And as we contain the first fruits of the Spirit, the down payment of the Spirit is groaning inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, which is the redemption of our bodies. So you see that that God's plan for redemption is creational. It's not It's not supernatural or anti-materialistic. No, he is actually going to remake the entire world and redeem his good creation, which includes our bodies. As being children of God, our bodies are going to be redeemed fully, and there's an already and a not yet to that. There's the already of now our bodies are under the stewardship of people who are indwelt by the Spirit, but there's a not yet in that we are still waiting for that to come in full. And that is the hope that we were saved. It's in this hope, in the hope of the redemption of our bodies, that we were saved. And this is Paul. He goes into the kind of what does it mean to hope? Well, fundamental to hoping is that it's not seen. And so there is that when you're hoping for something, there is a future aspect or orientation to our hope. Because you don't hope for what you see, you enjoy, you experience what you see. But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. So this is just Paul's way of saying you are hoping. You can only hope right now because it's not here, because we hope for what we do not see. And because of that, we are waiting with patience. And this is not a passive waiting. This isn't just kind of sitting back and watching the world go by, just kind of haphazardly going through about our lives. No, what everything that he's described so far is part of our waiting with patience. Because we have not yet been redeemed, because we still are dealing and battling with the flesh, we are called to put the deeds of the flesh to death and live to the Spirit, to set our mind on the things of the Spirit, to be filled with the things of the Spirit. And we do that by trusting the Word of God, by filling our minds with His will in our lives so that we can recall it even as we suffer, that we can hope and trust and patiently wait for our redemption. And that is that's really how he's going to frame the trajectory of the rest of the passage, is that this is a description of our groaning, of our longing, of our suffering that we have now. And he builds the rest of chapter 8 to give us this hope, to confirm our hope, to show the certainty of when we hope for the redemption of our bodies, it is a sure hope. It is a future absolute hope that we are waiting for. And so as you continue to work your way through Romans 8, I would ask you to do a couple of things. How are you waiting? What does it mean for you to be waiting? How are you waiting right now? And might you have made the mistake of mistaking this waiting for passivity? Or maybe, your life isn't passive, but your spiritual life is passive. You say, oh, well, if we're going to be redeemed, if heaven is future, then I'll just enjoy my life and not really think too much, not worry, not really apply myself too much to working out my salvation with fear and trembling. But in the context of Romans 8, that's really not an option for you. Waiting means filling yourself with the Spirit, of trying to obtain as much of the life of the Spirit as you can right now, to be that first fruit of salvation, to show to creation what it looks like for a son of God, a daughter of Christ, to be reigning on this earth, even through suffering, especially through suffering, especially as we groan, especially as we hope, we are portraying the glory of God to creation. And so you can go back to Romans 8 and think back on these first 8 or 9 verses or so, remembering there's a law of a spirit and there's a law of sin and death, and we are at war with both. and to remind ourselves that God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do by sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh, so that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. So walk according to the Spirit. Obey the Lord. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. So there's an obedience, there's a doing, but there's also a thinking. There is a using your mind and equipping your mind to transform your body by setting your minds on the things of the Spirit. And this will produce life and peace. And so that is how Paul would have us wait, how God would have us wait as we continue to suffer in this world, to continue to suffer from the spiritual warfare of putting our sin to death and living for Christ, and to suffer from a world that is subjected to futility, that is subjected to evil forces, that is living under curse. And so the encouragement here is wait well, wait with confidence, and wait actively engaging in the spiritual work of redemption that the Spirit of God through the Son of God is doing in you in this world. I'll see you next time.